my name is Janelle White. I'm with Vila Business Academy. In this section, we're going to talk about buying trends. Understanding your customers' buying trends will help you predict sales. By understanding your customers, you can predict when you may or may not have sales. This is really important for a business when you do your projections. If you can anticipate when your customers are going to buy your services, products and services, you can build entire marketing strategies that meet those buying trends. Buying trends are the consumer's perception on how they will make their purchases. So it will tell you how your customers will predict, you can predict when your customers may buy their products and services. Every consumer's product and services buying cycle is different. So you'll have to look at your products and services and what your consumers and what their buying cycle is. Some industries are based on yearly trends and some of them are life cycle. Let's go back to our example of a children's clothing store. If we go back to looking at what the parents are going to buy and when they're more likely than not to buy clothing for their kids, we know that in the fall when the kids start school, parents buy new clothes. We also know in the winter when it gets snowy and cold and Christmas time, they also buy school clothes for kids. We also know that parents buy school clothes in the spring and then again in the fall. What that does for you as a business owner, if you're selling school clothes or selling kids' clothes for school clothes for kids, you're going to be able to build a marketing strategy that works for them. So let's talk about what this does for a marketing strategy for you. If you understand your feast and famine market, when you're more likely to get more sales than not, you're going to be able to build a marketing strategy specifically for that need. And that is the feast and famine. Every business has feast and famine, so don't worry, you're gonna have famine, you're gonna have feast. Every business does that. But if you mirror your marketing strategy to your feast and famine market, your buying cycles, what's going to happen for you is that you can push sales up a little higher and minimize your costs during your famine. So in your feast market or in your buying cycle when it's up, you're going to be able to seize more opportunities and reduce your costs during famine. We're going to talk a lot about this when we talk about feast and famine. In your famine months, in the months where it's off cycle and you're not getting a lot of those sales, you can do a lot to reduce your costs. You can reduce your employees. You can give employees vacation during that time. Keep them during the busy season and let them take vacation during your lax season, when your season's off. You can also reduce your hours to your store. If you had a clothing store, you can maybe close one day a week or close on Mondays or close on Sundays and Mondays. So you can do a lot of things that will help you reduce your costs. If you understand how to reduce your risk in your famine months and in your feast months, push that marketing trend up. So let me give you an example of this. This is your feast and famine months, right? Let's say this is fall, and this is winter, and this is spring, right? We also have the down months. We have, this is fall, and this is pre-winter, right? What happens for most people, most businesses, is they'll do their marketing strategy and they'll have a good time and then sales will go down. So what does a business owner do? They freak right out. And so what they try and do in moving the business, instead of understanding that this is just a cycle, they start spending money, and they start spending money about here. And so they freak out, they start doing advertising and doing promotions and running around, and they start spending. So when do you think they stop spending money on their marketing? They keep going up, right? And they go up until they start seeing their sales that are equal to here, okay? And then they'll go, woohoo, my marketing plan worked, yeah. It worked, right? And it was just the regular cycle. So I tell my consumers is that if you understand your buying cycle and you understand that this is just a cycle that you're going through, instead of spend, you should have been saving, right? The time that they should have been really spending good marketing dollars is about here, just before. Because if they spend here, they can push it upward, right? And then lower their expenses rather than trying to force a market that's not there. Does that make sense? So when I tell you what is your buying trend, understanding your buying trend is really important. Save your money here, start spending your dollars, push your sales up just before your next buying cycle. If you have a seasonal market, make sure that you work on a budget. It's really important to have a budget if you have a cycle, a business cycle that is based on seasonal. And then if it's seasonal, you can really take in your buying cycles, feast and famine. A lot of retail places, retail leases, will allow you to negotiate terms based on your feast and famine market. So if I was a clothing store for a children's clothing store, I would try and negotiate a lease that said, in my famine months, I want to pay just a little bit less in rent to get me by, and I want to prepay it during my feast months. So I would like to pay less in this month and more in these months. And it will equal out over the year, right? Another thing you can do is save for that. Don't suffer the consequences of your famine market, because then you're always playing catch up. What you want to do is, if you understand the feast and famine market, right, and the buying trend, what you can do is you can save in the fall for your pre-winter and be ready to really seize opportunities in the winter. All of this affects your sales projections, right? If you say, I need to have $3,000 a month in sales, every month I need to have $3,000 in sales just to cover my expenses, what that's going to do is that's going to be a flat line across the board. That isn't a realistic expectation. Nobody does flat lines. Everybody has feasts and famines. So if you think, in my best months I'm going to do 5,000, in my worst months I'm going to do 1,000, you need to average that out. Also remember that most businesses has a customer base that will mature over time. Either they will mature or you need to get new customers all the time. If you look at a skateboard shop, right? Let's say you're going to open up a skateboard shop. That's a very youthful industry, and they're always going to be pulling in new customers and new customers and new customers. It's very different than other markets. Some other businesses don't have to pull in. They base it on the human life cycle. So if you were a photographer, you would follow the marketing or the buying trends of a human's life cycle. We talked about this in one of the other classes, that she recruits at the senior level. When the kids are in seniors in high school and they need to have their senior portraits done, they call a photographer. The next time that photographer goes and meets with them is when they get married and there's a big wedding involved, right? And the next time is when they have children and they're doing baby pictures and family portraits, and as they progress. Then they're doing generational pictures. So as you can see, a photographer that photographs is really based on the human cycle. And if you look at a human cycle, that's how it will go. Does that mean that the photographer only takes those one seniors and follows them all the way through their life? Well, no. Every year we have a new group of seniors, right? So it's a continual process. But if she's good and she understands her market, she's going to always be marketing to those seniors as well as the people that she's already photographed. Photographers also have a very unique market in the regards to they do have some that are seasonal. The spring and the summer is for senior portraits. And spring and summer is also really big for weddings. And so they have this double whammy. A lot of photographers don't work year round. A lot of them will only work in their feast months and then they take the other time off, and it's because they're crazy busy during their feast months. So instead of following this fall, winter, spring, they have a heavy spring, summer and very low winter, fall. So the bottom line is, I've given you some really good examples of other businesses. You need to figure out what's in your business and how to predict what your buying cycle is. So one of the critical mistakes made by a lot of businesses startup is they don't really understand what the buying cycle is. And so they spend all their money in the famine markets trying to prevent going out of business and not understand that it really will come around. So make sure that you understand your cycle and save money. If you know you're going into a famine market and your sales are typically low at that time, save your dollars, and then when it comes out, then you can spend again. So what I want you to know is you can determine the buying trends will really help you with good business strategy later on when we do the strategic planning. Do your research through existing businesses. Industry associations can tell you what buying trends are. There's an industry for everything, and they will tell you what the feast and famine market is for their industry. You can also look at industry magazines and internet research and focus groups. If you take 10 people in the room and say, when do you buy your kids' clothes? They'll tell you exactly when they buy their clothes. And that's a great way of gaining information about your consumers' buying trends. So let me tell you a really quick story how buying trends can really help your business. I had a retail space and she didn't understand her buying trends. And so what would happen is she had established she had to have X number of sales in order to pay her bills in her business. And then she was a single woman, so then she had to have X number to cover her mortgage and her personal utilities, right? And she hired me because she was frustrated because she would have these feast and famine, these buying cycles, buying trends that she really didn't understand. She would feast and famine, and she didn't really understand that was just the cycle of her business. It was the retail mentality, and she didn't understand that because she didn't come from that industry. So she was very frustrated because she would get all this money in, and she would go, woohoo, we're in the money, and she would go buy things. And then sometimes for the store, sometimes for herself, but she would go, oh, we're in the money, and she would spend her whole entire budget. And then she would go, oh no, now I don't have enough money because nobody's coming in my store, and I'm frustrated. And I says, well, you're just suffering the buying trends. And she says, what's that? And I went, oh, it's so important that you understand that, because if she had understood that, she would have saved money. And so you really do need to think about the buying trends. It does affect our businesses. It allows us to do projections and forecast when our sales are going to be there and how much are we going to sell and how much do we need to save, right? So the buying trends are really important. So my name is Janelle White. I'm with Vila Business Academy. I look forward to seeing you in the next session.